Hello everyone, this is Professor Sidebottom. In this video, we will talk about the preterite and the imperfect in Spanish. And when do we use these tenses? First, let's start with a short review of the preterite tense. The preterite of regular verbs. For the AR verbs, the endings in preterite are aste, o, amos, asteis, aron. I chose the verb cantar. Yo canté, tú cantaste, usted, él o ella cantó, nosotros o nosotras cantamos, vosotros o vosotras cantasteis, ustedes, ellos o ellas cantaron. The translation would be I sang, you sang, he sang, they sang, etc. ER and IR verbs have exactly the same endings in preterite. Iste, yo, imos, isteis, ieron. For the ER verbs, I have comer, yo comí, tú comiste, usted, él, ella comió. Nosotros o nosotras comimos, vosotros, vosotras comisteis, ustedes, ellos o ellas comieron. Translation, I ate, you ate, he ate, she ate, we ate, etc. Salir for the IR verbs, yo salí, tú saliste, usted, él o ella salió. Nosotros o nosotras salimos, vosotros, vosotras salisteis, ustedes, ellos o ellas salieron. Translation, I went out, you went out, he went out, or I left, you left, he left, we left, they left, etc. Here are some additional notes on the preterite. The AR and ER verbs that stem change in the present tense do not stem change in preterite. The IR verbs that stem change in the present tense have a stem change in preterite. Verbs that end in car, gar, zar have a spelling change in the yo form only, like buscar, llegar, comenzar, empezar. For example, buscar, yo busqué. If I want to say I looked for something, yo busqué. Llegar, yo llegué. I arrived. Comenzar, yo comencé, I started. The verb ver has no accents in the preterite. Ser and ir have the same forms in the preterite. Fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fuisteis, fueron, which can mean I went, you went, he went, she went, or I was, you were, he was, depending on the context. Creer, leer, and oír have spelling changes in the preterite because their stems end in a vowel. Some verbs like tener, estar, poder, querer, hacer, etc. are completely irregular in the preterite. Like, for example, if I want to say I had, I will say yo tuve. Yo estuve, I was in a place. Yo pude, yo quise, yo hice. Or tú quisiste, tú hiciste. Very different than the regular forms in preterite. And finally, here it is in small print, I, which means there are, becomes hubo in the preterite tense. When do we use the preterite in Spanish? We use the preterite tense to refer to actions that are seen as completed in the past. When we use the preterite, we know exactly when an action happened. We usually translate it in English using the ed form of the verb, like walked, talked, passed. Or if it's a irregular verb in English, we say sang, ate, became, etc. Here is an example. Ayer comí en un restaurante muy bueno. Yesterday I ate in a very good restaurant. I know exactly when this happens, and whenever somebody hears this, they know exactly when this happened. Yesterday. El fin de semana pasado fuimos al parque. Last weekend we went to the park. Again, very specific. When this happened in the past, el fin de semana pasado, last weekend. Also, we use the preterite to express the beginning or the end of a past action, like in the example, la clase de español empezó a las 9 de la mañana, or ella terminó la tarea anoche. We know exactly when the class started. We know exactly when she finished her homework. We also use the preterite to express a series of past actions and events, as in the example, el hombre se bajó del coche, miró a su alrededor y gritó muy fuerte. The man got out of the car, looked around, and screamed very loudly. As you can see, this is a series of past actions that are narrated using the preterite. These are some expressions that are commonly used with the preterite as they express a precise moment in the past, like ayer, yesterday, anoche, last night, anteayer, the day before yesterday, la semana pasada, last week, el mes pasado, last month, el año pasado, last year, de repente, suddenly, una vez, one time or once, dos veces, twice, tres veces, three times, etc. Now, here is a short review of the imperfect tense. For the AR verbs, we use the endings aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, aban. For ER and IR verbs, we use the endings ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. And I chose the verbs caminar, comer, and recibir. And you can see them conjugated on the screen. Yo caminaba, tú caminabas, usted caminaba. For comer, yo comía, tú comías, usted comía, él comía. For recibir, yo recibía, tú recibías, usted recibía, él recibía. There are only 3 irregular verbs in the preterite, which are ser, ir, and ver. And I, which means there is, there are in present tense, becomes había. There was, there were in the imperfect tense. When do we use the imperfect tense in Spanish? The imperfect is by excellence the past tense of description in Spanish. We use it to set the scene in a novel or a story before the action starts. It helps us describe in the past tense things like weather, location, physical characteristics, personality, and emotional traits. Also, it is used to express the hour and the date in the past. Here is an example. Eran las 3 de la tarde. Hacía mucho viento. Alex estaba en su recámara y miraba el reloj. Era un hombre muy guapo y muy inteligente. Sin embargo, se sentía muy solo e inquieto. Here are other uses of the imperfect tense in Spanish. The imperfect is also used to describe an ongoing action in the past when we don't know exactly when the action started in the past and when it ended in the past. Here's an example. Alex miraba el reloj. Esperaba la llamada de su hermano. Alex was watching the clock. He was waiting for his brother's phone call. In this example, we use the imperfect because we know that the action happened in the past, but we don't know exactly when. If I say Alex was watching the clock, we don't know, was that last night? Was that a few minutes ago? Was that last week? So that's why this is called the imperfect tense, because in a way it is imperfect in the sense that we don't know exactly when the action happened in the past. Another use of the imperfect in Spanish is to express a repetitive or habitual action in the past. Here's an example. Cuando era joven, yo leía muchos libros. Or, de niña, me gustaba jugar con los gatos de mi abuela. When I was a young person, I used to read a lot of books. Or when I was young. As a child, I used to like to play with my grandmother's cats. See, a repetitive action in the past. When I was young, again, it doesn't say when, like between this age and this age, or what year, just generally when I was young, or when I was a child, I used to do this, or I used to like to do that. These are some expressions that are used with the imperfect tense. De niño or de niña, cuando era niño, cuando era niña, siempre, con frecuencia, todos los días, todos los años, todos los meses, todas las semanas, and mientras. Here is an example. I chose an example with mientras this time. Ana leía mientras su novio tocaba el piano. Here are two actions that were in progress in the past at the same time. Anna was reading while her boyfriend was playing the piano. These two actions were happening at the same time in the past. Can we use the preterite and the imperfect together in the same sentence? The answer is yes. In Spanish, the preterite and the imperfect are often used together in the same phrase. The imperfect will be used to describe what was happening, as it is the tense of description in the past tense, and the preterite is used to express the action that interrupted what was happening at the time. Here is an example. Nosotros escuchábamos una canción cuando alguien tocó a la puerta. We were listening to a song when someone knocked at the door. See, the listening of the song was the action in progress. We were listening to a song, and somebody knocked at the door. That's the action that interrupted our listening. Here's another example. Ella caminaba en el parque cuando de repente vio un pájaro amarillo. She was walking in the park when suddenly she saw a yellow bird, right? The walking is the ongoing action in the past, and seeing the bird distracted her, interrupted her walking. Here is a short review. In Spanish, we use the imperfect to describe things like weather, the hour, a person, a place, an emotion, an ongoing action, or a repetitive action in the past. The translation in English is usually was plus ing, like I was looking where I was walking, or used to. I used to walk, I used to read. We use the preterite to talk about actions in the past, especially snap actions. The translation in English is usually the ed, past tense, like walked, entered, knocked. Or in the case of an irregular verb in English, ate, became, rang, sang, etc. There are certain forementioned expressions that go together with each tense, and the preterite and the imperfect can be used together in statements in Spanish. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this video helped you better understand the differences between the preterite and the imperfect in Spanish. Hasta la próxima!